From a video game perspective, there's lots to write about when it comes to Aliens. In terms of the development of games, it is one of, if not the most significant films ever to be released. Tons of video game designers grew up with it and cited it as a major influence. From shooters to survival horror, you can find references and signs of aliens everywhere. id Software were at one point in talks with 20th Century Fox to make an FPS based around aliens until they decided against it and made Doom instead, which basically was their version of Aliens only with hellbeasts. Even little things like the unmistakable M41A pulse rifle have made appearances plenty of times in games, officially or unofficially. Now the film itself is obviously a classic. You can see other things too. The makeup of the group of soldiers in Aliens, from the all-around leader to the hard-ass, the intellectual to the grunt, has been copied in games endlessly, in shooters, in strategy games. So many times it goes back to Aliens. The surroundings of Hadley's Hope, the claustrophobic vents, the alien lairs and battered sci-fi living quarters, we've seen them again and again, so many times over the years. The design of H.R. Giger's monsters themselves have also influenced many a video game creature. We could be here all day going through the amount of times that Aliens has influenced video games. Even mechanics like being deprived of ammunition, or the way that firefights often play out in games, are adept to Aliens. But for this video, I wish to talk about a specific Aliens-based game. The arcade game. It's obviously got a direct link to Aliens, and yet it's not a whole lot like it. As far as licensed games go, there is something strange about it. Let's have a look. So, Aliens as a film was released in 1986. However, Konami's run-and-gun licensed game based off of Aliens didn't come out until 1990, and just from playing it, it's not exactly an accurate adaptation. First off, Ripley's hair is blonde. Hicks doesn't look an awful lot like Michael Biehn either. Which is strange, but then you look at the murals for the game. That character sure as hell isn't Sigourney Weaver, and that kid is not Newt. Perhaps they weren't able to get the rights to those likenesses? Who knows. The game itself, as mentioned, is a run and gun where you shoot hundreds of brightly coloured aliens. But you also shoot zombies, other aliens who throw grenades and shoot guns at you, and all sorts of other odd creations that you won't recognise from the James Cameron film. Why is this? Well, an obvious answer would be that it would be kind of boring if you were just facing the same two enemies, xenomorphs and facehuggers, over and over. It is kind of a good idea to mix things up a little. But really, there's a lot more to it than that. And to get close to it, we have to look at something of an 80s phenomenon in the world of licensed games and merchandising in general, which is, how do you successfully market 18/rated R films to children without adults screaming? The mid to late 80s in particular was a glorious time for the adult action movie. Look at all the big hits back then: Terminator, Rambo, RoboCop, Commando, Predator, Schwarzenegger in general really, Die Hard, Aliens. All of these movies are big hits, and they're mostly all 18 rated except for Rambo. Sure, kids may well end up sneaking into the cinema and watching them, or they might see them at home on video somewhere or another, or they may even watch a cut-for-TV version where Dick Jones says airhead instead of asshole and everybody's a muddy funster.
You are gonna be a bad mother crusher.
But yeah, they're not supposed to be a market here, at all. These films are filled with blood and guts, sexual swear words, tons of guns and all that. It's amazing to think that such movies were once legitimate blockbusters, because they aren't really now. Still, they would be bigger if you could market them to kids. But how do you do that when they're not supposed to watch the film? When it comes to Aliens specifically, one company that gave it a go was Kenner, a now defunct US toy maker. In the wake of Star Wars and the merchandising boom it created, Kenner actually made an action figure for the original Alien film way back in 1979, of the alien naturally. However, it was only available for a short time. Alien was, after all, an 18-rated horror picture, and most toy stores balked at selling a figure based on it. Kenner's idea wasn't bad, but it was a little bit too early. Kenner didn't let go of the idea though, and they would try again. They released a much more successful line of toys based on aliens in 1992, consisting of both humans and xenomorphs. This lasted for a couple of years, as did another line based off of Predator, which purely consisted of predators. So what changed in the years between? It's easy for people to look at something like the Aliens game now and say, well, how can you make a game aimed at children from an R-rated movie? But it's easy to forget that by the mid to late 80s, people had figured it out. Sure, they can't actually see the film, but that doesn't mean you can't make kid-friendly spin-offs and still give kids the opportunity to be involved in the brand in every way aside from seeing the film, at least not officially. Remember RoboCop the animated series and the very successful line of RoboCop toys? What about Rambo, the Force of Freedom? Terminator soon had a line of toys as well, especially when Terminator 2 came around. I mean, those were huge. The Kenner line of Aliens toys were also to be based off a 1992 children's cartoon called Operation Aliens, much like RoboCop and that. The cartoon was cancelled, but the toys lived on. And so, while the box office was dominated by 80s action, there was still plenty of ways to get the kids involved, and, of course, make some money. With all this in mind, it's pretty obvious that Konami were thinking on similar lines. This is an arcade game, and kids largely spend money at arcades in 1990, so a more authentic Aliens game is not going to be the way to go. This is a consideration that others made as well. Data East's RoboCop game may feature lots of shooting, but no one actually dies in it. It's nowhere near as violent as the film, same with Rambo, T2 and so many others. It's just that few games make it quite as obvious as Aliens does. While it's easy to poke fun at the game for the wild liberties that it takes with the Aliens franchise, it wasn't alone in doing so. In this era, it was a common practice. It also should be noted that the Aliens arcade game is actually really quite good. Once you get past the pink aliens, you have this nice little run and gunner that also has different planes of movement. There's even the classic radar in some portions, as well as the loader. You even get a fantastic final boss fight with the alien queen at the end where, just like in the movie, you push her down the airlock and into space. It's jolly good. In many ways, it's an unofficial Contra game. The power-ups that you can get from the freeway to the flamethrower, the enemies that you end up facing, the way that the levels are made up are very Contra-esque. To be honest, I think it's a better arcade game than either the original or Super C, although the NES versions are obviously still kin. The music's bloody good too. It's not a super memorable soundtrack, but it fits the game perfectly. I like it a lot, and it was always a game I would go to if I saw it in the arcade. It's challenging without being too much of a coin muncher, and it's got that perfect arcade length. I don't even mind the vehicle sections all that much. These, along with the appearances of Newt, were actually cut from the Japanese release of the game for some reason, although I think they do well to mix the action up just a little. Overall, yeah, I really dig this game. I think that the rather mixed reputation it has nowadays is kind of unfair. It is also perhaps a little obscure now, and one big reason for that is a surprising lack of portage. Despite being fairly popular in the arcades at the time, it never made it to any home console. Why is that? It does come at an awkwardish time in 1990, sort of straddling two generations there. More than anything else though, perhaps Aliens, while sellable in the arcades, was less sellable at home due to the amount of time that had passed since the film's release. There probably wouldn't have been any kind of home version until 1991 at the earliest, and hey, Alien 3 would soon be out too. Even so, it's kind of a shame that it never made it because, as a game, it's really worth playing and worth being judged on its own merits. When you think of it as a version of an 18-rated franchise that's aimed at a younger market, it makes a hell of a lot more sense. Bye for now. Thanks for watching this video. If you like this video then please do like it, follow me on my assorted social media that you can find in the description, and you could also follow me on Patreon where you can find things like cover tapes, early access to my videos, Skype chats and exclusive Patreon streams. I would like to thank the following: Adam Schaefer, Andrew Dalton, Andy Capt, Audie Sawley, Conformist, Dustin Cooper, Gary Pinkett, George Newton, Grafham Blackpool, Guy Middleton, Iain Roberts, James Idd, James Loveridge, Jason Durso, Jason Goy, Jason Leach, Jason Stevens, Johan Eriksson, John Scott, Josh Jensen, Elle O'Brien, Lee Norris, ManagerSim.net, Mark Heslop, Mark Johnston, Mark Whittington, Martin Pataki, Annette McCrone, Olaf Albing, Pete Morris, Peter Sidorn, Bill Taprog, Piotr Margel, Rachel Maxwell, Romeo, Ryan Wyatt Coleman, Sean Zoltek, Seth Robinson, Simon Gulliver, Taylor Armand, The Unnatural, Tanyu J, Twisted Squote, Vishar D, and Yerka Operator.